To begin our program, we're going to create a data file layout called services. And the prefix is going to be ser_. And the version is 0 since this is our first one. Notice that commas separate each item of our data file layout. The key is going to be services.key and we'll search by code. The equal signs separate the header from the rest of the file layout. And then we'll begin to add our items. So code for services code, comma, and then a description and the format, N4. We'll continue to fill in the elements, name, which will be services name, and the format V40, which means it contains non-numeric data, and also its name ends with a $sign. Description. Cost, of course, is important, and it's going to be a numeric value. And finally, other will be a sort of catch-all field where the user can enter any details they want to. Then save your file layout, and in your folder make sure that there's no extension. For our next file layout, we're going to copy a previous file layout that I had called customer. So open it in Notepad, and we're going to make a few changes, specifically adding a comments section and an email, and a field which will be a B1 to show if the client is active or not, and the date they became active. We're going to create one more file layout, and this one will be to keep track of sales. We're going to call it sales history, the prefix sh_, and this is version 0. Use equal marks to separate it from the rest. And the elements we'll need to keep track of course, are customer code, service code, to identify the service that they used, the date for our record, units, and another comments, and another B1 that shows if it's paid or not. This will end up being a checkbox on our final program. Then save your file layout under the name of sales history, and remove the extension. Next, open Screenio, and we're going to generate screens using our customer data file. For the list view, only select a few important elements. To add edit, select all of them. First, we're going to work on the list view. Change the name from customer list to just customers, and center it. Since we don't already have add edit buttons, go ahead and add them now, and select the target customer list. And actually in your add button, change it from customer list to customer edit. And do the same with your edit button. Notice that it includes a record equal current rec. In the list view itself, we're going to change the spacing on some of our entries. Make the display width 6 for customer code, and change the name to simply code. We'll make last name and first name only display as 15 and the phone number as 12, and simply call it phone. Change comments to 15, and email. Make the active column 3. Then resize the list using space and backspace, and move it to the left using the arrow keys. In the same way, adjust the filter box, and delete the select key. On the edit screen, we're going to move around the items so that it makes more logical sense. Group the address items together. Just make the screen look good using the backspace and the spacebar and also the arrow keys. Rename the labels as you see fit. You can make the comments section multi-lined by using the page down. You can also use the page up key to make it shorter. To make the active element into a checkbox, choose Control, change control type, and then select Checkbox and Change. and set the truth value to 1 and the falsehood value to 0. Change the number of rows to make it fit better. To move lots of items at once, click on it, hit Ctrl S, and click on the next one, Ctrl S, and so on, and then you can move a group of items together. Hit Escape to deselect. Then save and test your screen, and you can see it. Use the color picker to choose a color for your background. Next, we'll set the tab order by clicking the Set Tab Order button and clicking through the slots in the order you want the tabs to go. To set some of the attributes of my input fields, look for your brconfig.sys and check to see if it includes color.sys and theme.sys. Open one of those and we'll see color attribute definition, and the one I'm going to use is input. First, you must set the foreground and background color to blank, and then add input in square brackets to the attributes field. Then we can go ahead and test the screen again, and since I like the color, I'm going to set them all to input. Next, we're going to do the same thing for the services menu. Create a list view and an add edit screen, and select all of the elements for each screen. Like we did to the previous list view screen, we're going to change the name to just services, and change the size of the columns in the chart to make it look good. And we'll also fix up the Edit Services screen. And rearrange it into a more intuitive order. To make the menu, we're going to create several buttons to go to all the screens that we need in our software suite. But first, use the Caption tool to create a title for our menu, and resize the screen. Make the caption say Main Menu, and center it. Use the Button tool to create several buttons, and the caption on this first one will be Add Sale. Add several more buttons, and space them out. We'll name them Customer, and we'll make the button work by, in the function area, adding our screen name in square brackets. So this will be Customer List. The next button will be Services, and the function will be Services List in square brackets. And then Run Monthly Report will be our last button. Pick a pretty color for the background of your menu. And when you test it, clicking on the Customers or Services should point you to the correct screen. Open a new window and name your screen Enter Sales. Choose the Sales History file layout and add the following elements to your screen: date, service code, paid, customer code, comment, and units. And organize the screen as you see fit. Then pick a background color, change the number of rows to 16, and increase the size of the comment box using the page down key. And space the fields out a little. Next, we're going to change paid to a checkbox. So select Control, Change Control Type, checkbox, and Change. And inside, add the truth value 1 and the falsehood value 0. Before we move on, I'm going to make a correction in our file layouts. The date in sales history should be a BH3. And it'll be the same in the customer data file too. Back in our screen, we're going to change the conversion type for our dates to dates and in parentheses the form you'd like to use, month, day, year in this case. And then we'd like to auto-populate it with today's date, so we're going to set form events and the initialize one, which will initialize the screen when it's opened, and we'll create a new one called init sales. Hit the new button, yes. And in your editor, you'll be able to create the code for your initialize event. Add a description, sets the default date for the enter sales screen. In Screenio, the matrices F and F$ represent information from the screen. So here we'll look at our data file layout for the prefix and the variable that we want to use, and we'll make let f of sh_date equal the internal function for today's date, save it, and then back on our screen, hit escape to exit that, and then save and test, which will also compile your new script. And you can see the date is in Julian form, so we need to format it. So let's double check our date conversion and remove the $, save and compile, and the date will display correctly now. Open the services list screen and add a button with the caption select. And give it the function let exit mode equal select and quit. Then on the enter sales screen, we're going to add buttons which will auto-populate the code for customer and the service code. Add your add buttons, resize them and place them accordingly. Add the function in curly brackets, add name, and edit. And this function will let the user select a customer code. First, you need to dim your cus $ to 1 and a size of 1025, and then your cus mat to 1 as well. Then cell name equals FNFM of customer list in parentheses and quotations. FNFM is what Screenio uses to communicate between this and your function. So if cell name exists, then put it in the field. And we're also going to populate the name in the name field. The F matrice or F$ matrice also keeps track of data passing between your screen and your code. So F of sh_customer code, which is from the file layout, the prefix and the element name. So let F of sh customer code equal cell name. Another variable, let s name equal fnopen, which is a fileo function to open a file called customer, using matcus$, matcus, and matform$. Then read number s name using form$ of s name. Key equal convert, meaning we're changing the cell name into a numeric 4, and read it into the two matrices cus$ and cus. No key ignore. If file of s name equals 0, which means it was read correctly, then s$ of co cus name equals trim of cus$ of cu first name, space, and the last name. And if, then always remember to close your file, s name, and if, and function end. And add using form of s name to the read statement. And then we'll do a similar process for the service code. So add the function, add code, and don't forget the curly brackets. For the function add code, we're going to use the two matrices co$ and c for code. So we're going to begin by dimming co$ to 1, 1025, and then co to 1. Cell code equals FNFM of services list in quotes and parentheses. Cell code is a variable that we're using here in our functions, And FNFM will pull in whatever code that the user has entered into our screen. And then if cell code exists, we'll put it in the cell code field, which we do by saying let sh service code equal cell code, and then auto-populate the name of service by letting our service name equal fnopen of our services file using mac, co, and form, and then read our service name using the form and the key, use the code we selected in cell code, read it into our two matrices, and then if file of service name equals 0, which means it was read correctly, then we'll put $$ of CO for service code name to equal the one we have in CO dollars their name. End if, and then close our file and end our final if. So whatever's in $$ will appear on the screen. Change the caption to add on both of your buttons. Then when we run our screen and click add, you'll be able to select and services, and the check mark works for paid. Next, we'll add exit buttons and position them at the bottom, and then we'll protect the fields that are auto-populated by our add buttons by clicking protected. On our customer edit screen, we'll add a conversion, which is date parentheses mmddccyy, and we'll add an initialize function, which will pre-populate today's date. So yes, we want to create init cust. And to do this, we're going to copy from our other initialize function, which was called init sales. So paste it in here. And all you have to do is change the prefix from sales history to CU. Then when we test it, you can see today's date. When we enter a new customer, we're going to want to set the default code to the next available one. So let old cust equal fnopen of our customer file, read into the matrices cust. And while the file is reading correctly, do this. Read the file using its form into the matrices. And then if the file has read correctly, let next code equal the max of either next code or the customer code currently read plus 1. Loop and close, and then let f of CU code equal next code. Oh, I need to fix the typo to equals. And then when you test it, the next customer code appears. And we'll add similar code to the add edit services screen to auto-populate the next available code number. So create init services, and we'll copy a portion of init cust, paste it, and make the appropriate changes. Services code, old cust to old SC, customer file to services file, and we'll change the matrices to SIR. And dim our new matrix, and set next code to 0 to begin with. Then test it. Next, let's make our input fields all the same by clearing out the default and changing the attribute to input. Do this to all of them, but the protected input fields will be the attribute protected. We'll do this on the edit services screen as well. Back on the menu, we'll add the function to our Run Monthly Report button. To select the dates which we want to print a report for, we're going to create a date data file that will only be used in the screen. Create a screen for your Run Monthly Report dates. We'll call it month dates and select the file layout dates and add the two that we just created on the file layout and change their captions to beginning and end. Add a button called Print Report with a function print month. and change the attribute to input for both of the fields, and then resize the screen, and add a background color. And then change the print month function to have begin date equal dates of date 1, and let stop date equal dates of date 2. First, we have to dim our sales and SARE matrices, both the string matrices to 1025, just to capture any size string that might be in there, and also the numeric matrices, sales and SARE, to 1. Then let PRM equal fnopen, which is a FileAO function, our data file sales history, and we'll use mat sales, and mat format. And we'll also open our services data file with let service equal fnopen services with mat SARE, and mat form. And lastly, we'll open our printer, which will be open number, and in parentheses pn : equals 255. And this opens the default printer, which in our case is going to be the print preview. Set a record length of 10,000, just something really big to make sure it will always fit, and it's a display file for output. Then we begin to print our monthly report. So we'll start by printing number PN, and we're using bold, monthly report, all paid sales, and bold. The second line will be from our date, begin date in the form of month, day, year, to our end date in the form of month, day, year. Printing number PN without anything will simply cause the printer to go down a line. Then we'll print our chart for date, service, and amount. Box and end box is what will form the chart and draw the lines around it, along with those pipes. Next, we're going to count our total as we go, and so I'm going to begin by setting my variable total to 0. Then do while file of PRM equals 0, which means it's reading correctly, and we'll read the PRM using our form PRM into mat sales and mat sales, one for string and one for numeric variables, and end of file ignore. So we'll say if sales of sh date is greater than begin date and less than stop date, and the sales are paid, then we'll read the service using form service and key to convert it into an N4 for the service code into mat SARE and SARE. And then we'll print it with the date in the correct form, and then rpad sets the spacing centered and to 40, and we'll trim the SARE name, and then rpad of string from SARE and SARE cost times the number of units. In order to print a numeric variable, we have to use the string internal function to convert it into a string variable, and this one's size 16. And our box. And finally, we'll add up the total, saying let total equal total plus the SARE of SARE cost times the amount, and end if. Then loop, and at the bottom we'll print number PN to the position of 050, in bold the total that we've come to. Lastly, we'll close our service, close our PN, and close our PRM. And that's the end of the function. And so when we save it and test run our screen, enter dates like -5 and 0, and print report, we'll see that we have a problem with our amounts and total. And so a review of our code, I noticed that the PRM here should actually be sales, since we are opening our PRM file and reading it into the sales matrice. So we'll go ahead and change that to sales, and it's also found above here, so change the PRM to sales. Save it, and we'll test, compile, and save our program, and there you can see the correct amounts. That's all for now. Thanks for joining us, and I hope this gave you a better understanding of how to create a software suite from scratch using Screenio.